Hello, everybody. This is Secular Sekai with Tridents Against Tyrants. And for those who are able to make it, thank you for being here today. I realize that this is not the usual time that this stream goes up for the weekly update on the war and other related topics. This just happened to be the time slot that worked, so it wouldn't be overlapping with other streamers on a Sunday. And because I have been very busy. So Saturday, although I tried to make it work, unfortunately did not end up working with scheduling for the stream. So I deeply apologize for that. But for those who can make it, I hope that, you get some useful information. And for those who can't, of course, you can always go back and check out the recording of the stream after it's finished. All right. If you guys can hear me, give me a plus in chat. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And I see we have a few people here. Belcowart, K. Hansen, Anna, let's see, Blonde Bombsheller, Wizard of Ooze. Yeah, and for those who are in Europe, we deeply apologize. For those who have insomnia or are up late, I hope that if you are up, feel free to join us here in the stream. All right, so today we've got a couple of things to go over. First piece of news would be, let's go ahead and jump right into it. For those who missed the update, we did get a good amount in the fundraiser monobank here recently from PayPal donations, and the Buy Me a Coffee is still building for a transfer. So from PayPal donations that went to monobank, a withdrawal was made, and equipment was purchased for our campaign. We are now at 25 of 110 drones purchased total. So thank you again for everyone who has contributed for our ongoing FPV drone fundraiser. All right, now let's jump right into the news. So first piece of news, coming from Sky News. Putin makes absurd attempt to, quote, to seduce West. Leaders call for Olympics truce. Here we go. Draft Peace Summit statement condemns nuclear threats and... Oh, hold on. Oh, we have here... Here we go. Interesting. Apologies, it's loading more than one article in at a time because I put this into simple reader mode for these news article segments. Here we go. Putin's absurd peace proposal, a quote, hollow attempt to seduce the West. Vladimir Putin's purported interest in peace negotiations is a hollow attempt to seduce the West, war analysts say. His absurd ultimatums are part of a campaign to sabotage the Swiss peace conference and mislead Kyiv's allies to permit the violation of Ukrainian sovereignty, according to the Institute for the Study of War. The Russian leader's so-called peace plan included Ukraine surrendering almost 20% of its territory and abandoning its aspirations to join NATO, and the West lifting all sanctions and recognizing part of Ukraine as Russian. The Kremlin is not interested in good faith negotiations with Ukraine and only feigns its interest in negotiations as part of a wider informational effort intended to convince the West to preemptively make concessions that violate Ukraine's sovereignty, said the ISW. Mr. Putin's demands would, quote, irrevocably damage the principle of state sovereignty and the inviolability of international borders. The ISW called Mr. Putin's promise to respect a ceasefire, quote, particularly hollow following months of Russian war crimes against Ukrainian civilians and and prisoners of war. Russia denies allegations of committing war crimes. The International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for Mr. Putin's arrest. Putin's demands continue to reflect his long-demanded ultimatums that are based on presuppositions that deny the existence of an independent and sovereign Ukraine and that seek to seduce the West to preemptively compromise on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, said the ISW. So I wanted to open with this to highlight it just because, this article, this short segment, this article in from Sky News does really highlight the fact that this is kind of similar to what Putin's government has been saying for a while now, which is basically saying we'll only offer peace if Ukraine agrees to our ridiculous terms, which involve Russia keeping without any consequences all of what they currently occupy and are attempting actively to steal from Ukraine, land and resources and people for those who are being forced to live under occupation. The timing for this quote, official statement from Putin, the timing just is because it's a hissy fit, or it's an attempt to basically offer negotiations that are not in good faith at the exact same time as this peace summit in Switzerland that Russia is not able to attend. This is Russia's response, basically, to not being invited to the peace summit. So obviously, none of that is going to fly. None of those terms and conditions are realistic. They're not going to happen. So the reason this is so important to underline and to emphasize is because it really does, it plays into the long-term Russian propaganda, this idea that Ukraine would not, it should not be, and other neighboring countries that would aspire to join NATO should not join NATO, that the growth of the NATO alliance is somehow a bad thing or an imminent danger to Russia, even though it's not. Basically, it's it's a non-starter for any kind of conversation. This is just Russia plugging its ears and drawing its line in the sand, petulantly, like a child. So going to what this ties into more directly. Let's see. Next article I've got is one moment. Here we go. Yep. Hold on. There we go. That's proper size. From the... all right. So, from The Guardian, Ukraine war briefing, Kyiv and Moscow exchange attack waves as peace summit is set to begin. So, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, let me go ahead and put this into the chat. There's the article. Kyiv and Moscow exchange attack waves as peace summit is set to begin. Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Switzerland on Friday ahead of a two-day Ukraine peace summit, with dozens of world leaders set to attend, but without Russia. The Ukrainian leader, who hopes to marshal international support for his plan to end the war, said on X, formerly Twitter, "There will be 2 days of active work with countries from all parts of the world, with different nations that are nonetheless united by a common goal of bringing a just and lasting peace in Ukraine closer." Zelensky said talks would focus on nuclear safety, food security, and the return of prisoners of war and Ukrainian children taken to Russian-controlled territory. So I want everybody to remember that with Russia not present any peace summit is not a peace summit of negotiations between both sides. This is a peace summit of invest in us, invest in Ukraine continuing to be able to fight this war and fight off the aggressor who has proven that they will take advantage and attack their neighbors, that they may even do so for other current active members of the NATO alliance or the EU. This is a peace summit meant to help convince more Western leaders to offer more support to Ukraine within the next 10-year period. And that could encompass all of this war and even a post-war security situation. Of course, we don't know how long this war will go on. For all we know, it could go on for 10 years. But yeah, we've seen from several defense pacts, defense agreements that have been made between Ukraine and individual NATO countries recently that it looks like this summit is a talk not just for the immediate future, but for long-term security of Ukraine and the continent as a whole. So, very good to see. I don't want people to misunderstand this peace summit as, oh, this is really, this is a negotiation with Russia, because some people might see it that way. There can be no negotiation until both sides are talking to each other, and Russia is not at a point where they're willing to make any concessions. They're only demanding concessions from Ukraine and everyone else. So, let us hope that that the end result of all of these talks between Ukraine and allied nations will result in further military and economic assistance to Ukraine, and in the future, a long-term degradation of the Russian economy. All right. The U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the leaders of Germany, Italy, Britain, Canada, and Japan are among those set to attend the Swiss summit in Lucerne. Despite months of Ukrainian and Swiss lobbying, some others will not be there, most notably China. The gathering comes after the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, said Moscow would only enter peace talks after Ukraine pulls its troops out of the east and south of the country, a plan which Zelensky dismissed. A group of 7 leaders have targeted China's role in providing assistance to Russia in its war against Ukraine and its, quote, harmful overcapacity, despite misgivings from Germany. On the second day of the G7 summit in Puglia, Italy, the U.S. drove home a 36-page communique that had condemned Chinese subsidies for products such as solar panels and electric cars, which it said were leading to, quote, global spillovers, market distortions, and harmful overcapacity. U.S. officials identified China as a major supplier of dual-use materials, those with civilian and military applications, to Russia that they said Beijing knew were being used against Ukraine. So, yeah, China not attending is a statement on their part that they don't want to be seen as taking a direct involvement in this conflict at all. They would rather the focus be shifted just to other nations who are either directly fighting, of course, in this case, just Ukraine and Russia, or directly giving equipment to either side. In the case of China, although it may have changed recently, technically it's been indirect what's been given to Russia, and it's been dual-use stuff, but that's just it. It's still dual use, as mentioned in this article. So things that can still be utilized for military purposes, even if that's not technically the direct use, or even if it's something that could be used for non-military purposes. I mean, it's like if you give a truck is something that can be used for non-military or military purposes. Same thing with any FPV drone. This is a war of dual purpose, with just equipment in general. So, yeah. I think that it's appropriate that U.S. officials went ahead and we're trying to call China out on that a bit. All right, Vladimir Putin has demanded that Kyiv cede more land, withdraw troops deeper inside its own country, and drop its NATO bid in order for him to end his war in Ukraine, issuing his fresh ceasefire demands while speaking to diplomats at the Russian Foreign Ministry as leaders convened for the Ukraine Peace Summit. The Russian president publicly updated his terms for ending the war in Ukraine for the first time since he launched a full-scale invasion in February of 2022. Kyiv dismissed Putin's conditions as, quote, absurd, because they are, with Volodymyr Zelensky saying the offer could not be trusted and Putin would not stop his military offensive even if his ceasefire demands were met. That is correct. They would not, and we're all aware of that. Also on Friday, Putin said on television that almost 700,000 Russians were fighting in Ukraine. In December, he gave the figure of 617,000 taking part in combat operations, saying that of those, 244,000 had been mobilized. On the ground in Ukraine, a Russian airstrike killed one person and injured at least 4 in the northern Sumy region on Friday. The military administration there said the strike hit the town of Shostka, about 45 kilometers, 28 miles from the border with Russia. It said on Telegram, giving no details about damage. The strike came as Kyiv and Moscow staged dozens of drone and missile attacks overnight on Thursday and during Friday. So, of course, same right now. It is the same as it has been. There's still strikes on both sides. Despite the Russian attempt to create a buffer zone in the Belgorod region with their recent offensives there, Ukrainian attacks on southern Russia's Belgorod region did kill 6 people on Friday. Officials said 4 bodies were pulled from the rubble of a multi-floor apartment building hit by Ukrainian shelling in the border town of Shebekino, Russia's emergencies ministry said, adding after midnight that 50% of the rubble had been cleared. A Ukrainian drone struck a car in a village near Shebekino, killing the driver, said the regional governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov. He said a woman was killed in her home. So, there's a little bit more detail here. Well, I guess it says here, in Ukraine, 1 person and at least 4 injured. Over here, 6 people. Yeah, so it's less than 10 on both sides. There's more detail provided here, but regardless, the point is that both sides are continuing to strike one another, and strikes within Russian territory are still continuing. In my opinion, and I'm sure in many of yours, Ukraine, of course, has the right to do this. Ukraine has been put through a lot by the terrorist federation, the fake federation of Moscovia. And yeah, unfortunately, we'll see, of course, more of this until the war comes to an end. Now, the rest of this, I'm sure, is regarding the exchanges and attacks between both sides. But really, the Peace Summit is the primary thing to highlight here. So, we have a Peace Summit. We have the Peace Summit. We have Putin's absurd demands coming at the same time as the Peace Summit. Basically, what I want to underscore here is don't think that this is the beginning of any real diplomatic end to this war. It is possible that at some point, maybe in 2 years, 4, 8, 10, whatever the case might be, however long it might be, that there would end up needing to be some kind of diplomatic solution. Ideally, Russia would just get out of Ukraine completely because what they've done is wrong, highly illegal, breaks international laws and norms, is an attempt at genocide. It is it's horrible, and ideally Russia will be completely pushed out in just this war, this one conflict. But there's no way of knowing what the future may look like. For all we know, there could end up being a follow-up war to this one, just like how the Chechen wars had more than one. There were 2 Chechen wars, not too far apart from one another. We really don't know. But all we can do is continue to support Ukraine, continue to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and contact our governments, our officials, to let them know that that is the will of the free people of this world, of whether you're an EU nation, a nation within NATO, the US, Canada, wherever you might be. Just remember, this is a long-term matter. And from a grassroots level, we're all doing what we can within our power in order to keep the momentum going for support for Ukraine. So thank you everyone for being here to do exactly that. And please be sure to go check out other websites, other channels, other initiatives that are doing the same thing. Now then, let's see. We don't have any questions yet, but we have here from Holy Oblation. Not really a question, but I think someone needs to put Putin in timeout. Yeah, permanent timeout. 6 feet under, in my opinion. That would be helpful. It wouldn't end everything because, unfortunately, what's happening in Moscovia is beyond just Putin. As we've seen over many, many years, Putin would just be replaced by someone else. There really needs to be a drastic change in Russian society for these things to stop happening. How that can happen, in what way that can be brought about, I'm not certain, but hopefully we can see that. Honestly, a breakup of the Russian Federation is probably the only way that we would see hostilities like this cease to be as much of an issue. And it can't just be a partial breakup, like when the empire fell apart or when the Soviet Union broke apart. It would need to be a pretty big one. It would have to be one that resulted in power vacuums being filled by EU and NATO friendly entities. There is no easy solution, but thank you for your comment. All right, next piece of news. This is very interesting because it corresponds to something that I had seen very recently with a few other groups when I was working with them a few weeks or a few months back. This is from the Kyiv Independent, putting it into chat. All right. So, what's behind the enemies of Ukraine list allegations by far-right U.S. politicians? Republican Jim Banks sent letters in recent days to a number of high-profile figures in the U.S. far right, saying that they had been added to a Ukrainian NGO's list of individuals and groups responsible in the U.S. impeding aid to Ukraine. The congressman alleged that Texty, the Ukrainian NGO in question, previously worked with the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Texty released a statement on June 13th that its team was facing unprecedented pressure, manipulation, slander, demands to strip us of donor funding, and threats of physical violence. Banks, who is running for Senate in Indiana, has said on June 11th that other Ukrainian NGOs have published similar lists, which have published the personal information of those named in apparent attempts to intimidate them. Banks added that he sent an accompanying letter to key congressional committee members urging them to stop, quote, partnering with any actors overseas who encourage the harassment of Americans. Now, as this article is mentioning, there have been several Republicans who are MAGA affiliated or really not American classic Reagan Republicans or centrists or center-right Republicans, although those aren't really terms used in American politics, but as a concept, they do, centrist and center-left, center-right, they do exist as groups within the two-party system in the U.S., within factions inside of the two big tent parties of the GOP and the Democrats. These kind of lists, they've been around for a while. I mean, I would have to look at this one in particular, but I know of several American NGOs. I know of, in particular, NGOs started by Republican citizens of the U.S. that actually report on the voting record in support or against aid for Ukraine. So I've seen those. I know that those exist. I think that going after Ukrainian NGOs doing similar work is just low-hanging fruit, because going after the domestic ones, while they may plan to do so at some point, is a little more difficult for MAGA and far-right Republicans, far-right groups in general, to do at this time. Yep. So let's see here. Banks also posted on his personal X account that he was put on a, quote, enemies list that was compiled by the Ukrainian government. What's really behind the governmental funding allegations? Ina Gadzinska, a journalist at Texty and one of the authors of the report, told the Kyiv Independent that the outlet has no connection to either the Ukrainian or U.S. governments, does not consider its report to be a, quote, hit list, and did not publish any personal information. Gadzinska added that Texty did not receive any government funding for the project. The following day, Banks wrote that congressional Republicans had moved to, quote, defund the Ukrainian NGO that created a, quote, watch list that consisted of conservative lawmakers and private American citizens. The Kyiv Independent reached out to Banks' press office for comment several times, but received no response. Elon Musk then commented below the post saying that the NGO should be added to the list of sanctioned terrorist organizations, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, these lists typically just are showing who it's public record. You can easily look up, even without the U.S. government itself puts this out, which members of Congress vote in what way. For those who don't want to go to a U.S. government website and sift through that information, see it for every single vote after filtering for which ones are specifically related to Ukraine and support for Ukraine, there are NGOs that compile that information, that publicly available information, and put it together for you. It's not a hit list. It's not a watch list. It's just saying who are those that are voting in a certain pattern. And the idea being that as a citizen, particularly an American citizen, if you support Ukraine, then you can contact a representative if they happen to be yours, if you are one of their constituents, and urge them to either continue supporting Ukraine or start doing it. Start supporting Ukraine if they haven't been doing so with their voting record. So this is quite obviously, just from what I'm seeing in this article, I would need to go and take a look at Texty itself more closely to see what these allegations are. But if these allegations are coming from MAGA Republicans and Elon Musk making ridiculous statements like this, it obviously seems like it's MAGA and far-right Republicans basically putting out a political hit, if you will, to discredit and shut down this information from being shared by NGOs based in Ukraine, trying to inform people so there can be support for their country. I will say that anyone who wants to look into this a little bit further, Texty, the group mentioned here, is TEXTY. I've got it highlighted now right there. Another domestic group that is that has a similar list talking about Republicans specifically, all Republican members of Congress, when it comes to their voting records and whether or not they've been supportive of Ukraine, would be, here we go, Republicans for Ukraine. And in fact, you know what? I'll go ahead and just open this up so you guys can see right quick. Might be a little compressed because I have it zoomed in a bit, but yeah, Republicans for Ukraine GOP congressional report card. And this is, this is literally, perfectly legal. It's public information. The fact that they're going after Ukrainian groups doing similar work is pretty telling that Republicans who are having the spotlight shined on them for this. It goes to show that it is an important topic for American constituents, including Republican voters and constituents, who have divided opinions about aid to Ukraine. And yeah, it's very annoying to see the fact that they just go after the lowest hanging fruit, which is, in this case, demonizing a foreign organization, one that is from the country in question, from Ukraine. Anyway, back to this article. Rogan O'Handley, a prominent MAGA influencer active on X with the handle DC Drano, shared the letter he had received from banks claiming that President Volodymyr Zelensky has added him to his enemies list. O'Handley then added that a Ukrainian NGO funded with our tax dollars has labeled me an enemy of their state. Texti's report has been widely shared on social media with false claims that the organization, the list contents, and its connections to the Ukrainian and U.S. governments growing with every retweet. Far-right conspiracy theorist and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote that Zelensky's quote, and again, this is a Marjorie Taylor Greene quote, "Thug regime has deemed me an enemy of the state and put elected members of Congress like me on their state kill list." Again, conspiracy theory, completely blown out of proportion. It's just fear-mongering, as several people have noted in the chat. And yeah, we've got a bit more. Let's go over exactly what's contained in Texti's report. What exactly is Texti's report? Texti's report, labeled Roller Coaster from Trumpist to Communist, the forces in the U.S. impeding aid to Ukraine and how they do it, was released on June 6th. The report contains an in-depth exploration of 388 individuals and 76 organizations involved in the, quote, ecosystem of mutual support of opponents of aid for Ukraine. Texti's website states it is a media outlet founded by Anatoly Bondarenko and Roman Kulchinsky in 2010 and has won several journalism awards, including the European Press Prize in 2024. Texti says its research is funded exclusively by its readers. The claims about the alleged financial support by the U.S. State Department appear to stem from the fact that Bondarenko previously was a volunteer trainer at the Tech Forum Ukraine almost 10 years ago. The forum was a program from Tech Camps, a public diplomacy program hosted in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, at the U.S. State Department. The program brought together more than 60 local journalists, civil society community leaders, and private sector partners in Eastern Europe, with local and international technology experts. The two-day workshop helped increase digital and media literacy and gave participants the tools to communicate effectively in the 21st century. Besides the single two-day workshop conducted almost 10 years ago, there is no other evidence to support the claim that the U.S. State Department or any other government entity has supported Texti financially or otherwise. It's a literal map. Oh, okay. Let me pull up the map. Let me pull up the website for Texti then. Well, let's finish the article and then we'll take a look at Texti itself so we can all have a look at this. Because, yeah, it does seem to be more than just voting records. So, yeah, we'll take a look. That being said, this rhetoric from the far-right factions of the GOP, yeah. To me, on the surface, it seems unwarranted, but we're going to take a look at Texti before finishing. Yep. In a statement on X on June 9th, Texti said that it had, quote, faced an unprecedented wave of hate after the report was published. It's not a pretty picture. What a second... There we go. Claims that the list of U.S. opponents of aid to Ukraine is a, quote, kill list, persecution, or doxing, or that the Texti editorial team is trained or funded by the U.S. government is an outright lie. Texti reiterated that Bondarenko was a trainer who taught activists at one of the tech camps, but said that it was just one of many training sessions it had conducted. All right, let's see. The aim of the report was not to harass or intimidate the individuals and groups named, but rather to openly and objectively examine issues that are key to our country's survival, such as who the U.S. opponents of aid to Ukraine are and why they oppose it, Texty said. And Gadzinska emphasized that the report did not call the listed individuals and groups, quote, enemies. Texty operates as an NGO and never takes money from the Ukrainian government, she said, adding that the outlet has criticized Zelensky before and after the presidential election in 2019. Gadzinska also shared with the Kyiv Independent some of the vitriolic and threatening messages that Texty received after the report was published, which insulted Ukraine and claimed that the report was an act of, quote, declaring war on the U.S. Yeah. So, very big overreaction from what I've seen so far, just what I am hearing so far about this. But I am very interested to look at this website and this report now. So let's see. And it includes, which other figures are mentioned by Texty? As the title suggests, the report is not limited to the far-right politicians and commentators who are often the face of American opposition to Ukraine. It also includes a number of prominent individuals and organizations from the left, such as the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft and the anti-war organization Code Pink, mostly known for its opposition to Israel. Yeah, and I have known far-left individuals and groups who I've spoken with on the left and the right who are opposed to the war in Ukraine. Of course, the majority of the time I've been seeing it, it's been from far right conservative individuals in U.S. politics. But it makes sense that there are at least some on the left, unfortunately, who just believe that peace should come at any cost, even if it is a horrible cost for whatever country is being negatively impacted by a bad faith peace agreement, or the U.S. or allies. Yeah. In any case, let's see. All right, so then this portion is going over groups that are not far right. Yeah, Code Pink, that are quote, pro-peace, but in bad faith. Tucker Carlson having allegations of Ukraine's hit list. And again, I've gone ahead and put that in the chat. So anyone who wants to look at this article themselves, feel free to take a look at the Kyiv Independent article that is posted. Let's finish this up, and then I'm going to take a look at Texty itself so we can all take a look at this directly. Tucker Carlson's allegations of Ukraine's, quote, hit list. It is not the first time that far-right figures in the U.S. have falsely claimed that the Ukrainian government has created a public hit list of opponents of Ukraine. After far-right political commentator Tucker Carlson interviewed Russian President Vladimir Putin in February 2024, a widely distributed post on X claimed that Carlson had been placed on a, quote, kill list by the Ukrainian government. Carlson traveled to Moscow to record the 2-hour and 7-minute interview, during which he seldomly interrupts Putin as he echoes Russian propaganda and shares false narratives on a wide variety of topics, including his justification for Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In fact, Carlson had been added to a list compiled by the Ukrainian NGO Mirotvorets, which studies threats to Ukraine's national security and has been in the Mirotvorets database since 2023. Okay, so, I see. So, basically, yeah, like the United States, Ukraine has a list of potential information or otherwise security threats to, national security, which the U.S. has databases like those as well. But hyperbole is added to it, saying that there is a, quote, kill list that individuals like Tucker Carlson have been added to. So, yeah, I see. Fascinating. But regardless, anyone who's familiar with Tucker Carlson and his flavor of propaganda, yeah, it's not surprising that individuals in Ukraine would not be fond of him, but unless there are actual allegations of a real quote hit list, it's just hyperbole. It's just um it's just what's the word I'm looking for, or the phrase I'm looking for? The boy who cried wolf. Um, yeah. Let's take a look at Texty itself. Actually, hold on. Let me go up here. There we go. All right, let me take a look. And this is a relatively short. This is a statement about threats that have been made against Texty. All right. Let's see. Now, I may be overlooking this, but oh, let me see. Ah, here we go. I see. Ah, here we go. Right. Okay. So someone in chat said, "Look, take a look. It's a map." I mean, it's a map in the sense that it's a diagram. But it's not a map of physical locations or addresses or anything like that. All right. So what I'm gonna do right now is put a link to the Texty report and their statement about reactions against Texty following the report, so anyone interested can take a closer look for themselves to make an objective decision on this. And I do mean an objective decision because I have my own opinions that I mean, just looking at this so far, and of course the fact that it's the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson crying about this is very telling to me. But of course, we should take a look at all of the information and decide ourselves as individuals. So I'm going to post both, and then let's take a quick look at this report and the statement from Texty itself. So first, here's the report. Oh, Anna's saying rabbit hole. Yeah, yeah. We're not going to spend the whole stream on this, but I do want to touch on this without just, vaguely talking about it from this article. So I'm going to put both of these in here. We'll take a quick look, and then we're going to move on to the next article. Oh, I shouldn't need reader mode for this. There we go. All right. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the report itself. All right, from Trumpists to communists, the forces in the U.S. impeding aid to Ukraine and how they do it. Hold on, can I close this? There we go. Project is funded exclusively by the readers of texty.org.ua. You can support their work at that link. Supplement dated June 9th, 2024. This is a statement of facts, neither a list of enemies nor a kill list. So on June 9th, that was added in order to clarify that. This article has sparked a swift and organized wave of hate on social media. Hold on. A little bit of it's being cut off. There we go. On social media platform X, based on manipulative accusations. Therefore, we find it necessary to provide an explanation for readers who draw their own conclusions after reviewing the material. The table, and again, we're not going to go over everything just because it's a lot of information. The table of research subjects which has generated the most controversy is neither a list of enemies of Ukraine nor a kill list, as it has been labeled in numerous posts circulating on platform X. These data were collected and published solely to demonstrate the evidence supporting the theses presented in the article. The article itself is not an accusation, but a study of the political and media context that influences government decisions regarding further support for Ukraine in the Russian-Ukrainian war. The editorial team of texty.org.ua does not deny, condemn, or dispute the right of American citizens, media institutions to express any opinions or hold any political beliefs. We value and respect freedom of speech, which is essential for a democratic society. In turn, we reserve the right to investigate a topic directly related to the preservation of Ukrainian statehood, present evidence, state facts, debunk false arguments, and compare them with those propagated by Russian propaganda worldwide for decades since the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Unfortunately, this part of our research was not as popular among readers. The decision to conduct and publish this research is the sole responsibility of the texty.org.ua team, whose work on this project is funded by reader donations. We are open to discussion and reasoned feedback. So, again, it is an in-depth report. We're not going to go over the whole thing. It names individuals. It's got an interactive map here of listed entities where you can highlight over each and you'll see people as well as groups, which just pop up on the screen. Media, individuals and groups within media, politics, subject matter experts. There are 387 individuals and 76 organizations on our list. These include politicians, political movements and groups, media and journalists, experts and think tanks. Some individuals appear in multiple categories. Here we go. Yeah, a little more than half in the sample are right wing, about 1 in 8 are left wing, and the rest do not associate themselves with a specific ideological platform. So, yeah, I'll leave it to you guys to go take a look. But this is no different, in my opinion, than the information that's already being put up by American citizens regarding who is or is not standing with Ukraine. The only difference is this is a bit more, a bit broader. This is actually focusing on more than just congressional Republicans, and their voting patterns. So, yeah, I'll let you all form your own opinions, but again, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to call this a hit list of any sort. And again, we just see paranoia and fear-mongering continue to overwhelm the American Republican Party in the modern era, which is sad to see. And I mean, actually, there also is another official statement that's longer and more detailed, which again is linked. Go take a look. But they already had a statement that they added to the beginning of the actual report itself, so I'll just leave it to you guys to go take a look at that on your own time. All right. Also zoom down, covers all the influencers. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the bottom line is this. You can't talk about individuals without having a list of individuals. And the fact that this list was put together at all, even if there's no private addresses, even if there's no map of where to find a group or an individual, even if there's no information that would actually be dangerous to put out, aside from whether or not a group has taken actions uh, that support or undermine Ukraine in this conflict with Russia, even if it's just a simple list of, yeah, a simple list of people that says this person has not supported Ukraine. If you have enough paranoia, if you have enough of an ability to raise a ruckus about something, you can make anything sound like the boogeyman, and that's what this is. In any case, I found this very interesting. I'm probably going to look deeper into this later just out of curiosity, but yeah. Continue to call your representatives, everyone, especially if you're in the U.S. Push for democracy. Push for preserving your country and not letting fear be something that divides and controls your nations, whatever they might be, wherever in the world you might be. All right. Next, we're about 50 minutes in because I went on to this for a little bit. Yeah, home addresses of U.S. politicians are all public. Yeah, that too. That too. Let's see. Next, let's go ahead and move over to information about what's happening at the front lines. So for that, let's see. We'll get just a little bit of the beginning and end of a report. One sec, we'll get that pulled up. Oh, if it'll load. Okay, here we go. So we'll get a little bit of information right quick from Juzzy.
Day 843.
Oh, one moment. If you guys get any double audio, let me know.
of the Ukrainian war map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 526,000 military personnel losses, which includes an additional 1,160 losses in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, not a single tank, but I think I can shed a little light on the reason for that a little later in the video. Then also 6 APVs and a whopping 58 artillery. And we also now have a number of stats to show where Russia sits with its China-supplied Desert Cross golf buggies and other various four-wheeler ATVs or quads, not to mention motorcycles. So this data here represents the visually confirmed losses for each type of vulnerable platform, with the numbers generally headed in an upwards direction, as you can see there. Noting the sharp increase of motorcycle usage in front offensives, for instance, they begin thereabouts mid-April, as Russia slowly but surely transitions part of their military vehicle fleets to, well, something a bit cheaper realistically. Then headed across to the map, as reports have emerged of a massive fire outbreak at a gas storage facility in Saratov of Russia, creating a dramatic column of fire visible from miles round. The exact cause of the incident remains unclear, although the Saratov Oblast governor suggested that unusual heat, leading to depressurization and combustion, might have been to blame. Emergency services have shut off the pipeline and are actively addressing the situation with no casualties reported. But far from an isolated case, as this incident mirrors a previous event in February when a gas pipeline near the Perm-Krai region caught fire. Additionally, in April, footage surfaced showing a burning oil pipeline in Russia's Rostov Oblast. So occurrences like these appear to be either, first of all, something that underscores issues within Russia's energy infrastructure, or partisan activity, sabotage, or AFU drone activity. But either way, none of those choices makes for a good situation to be in. Then also on the map, we'll take a brief look at some of those satellite images from events just before the weekend, where a large flurry of one-way Ukrainian UAVs hit the Morozovsk airbase in Rostov, which was, by the way, the second mass drone attack on the airfield in as many months. Now, at a glance, we see a number of scorch marks where jets may have been prior to the event, but interestingly, we see what appears to be two Russian Su-34 jets in a single hangar, which was more likely than not two or more drones targeting the hangar, and successfully striking through that eggshell of a hangar roof. Plus, on the balance of probabilities, sending shrapnel raining down, causing some level of damage on those two jets. And that's where it gets interesting, because Russia has a lack of hangars for their jets, which realistically means if Ukraine sees a hangar, they will likely target it with drone attacks, because surely Russia will use said hangar in an attempt to obfuscate what's beneath and hide their most prized possessions. It's also true that Russia has built a bunch of makeshift hangars in recent times for their jets, but I suspect they will offer equal to or even less protection than this one, with the impact of the drone not only raining down shrapnel, but damage and debris from the destroyed steel roofing as well. And more importantly, a site like this should have been much better protected. Now, Russian sources gave all sorts of conflicting reports about this event, from nothing happened to there was an attack to jets damaged with further assessment necessary, but ultimately, Ukrainian Chief of Intelligence, Bordanov, stated that Kyiv fully intends to strike the airfield again, all in an effort to decrease jet sorties into Ukraine. Then headed to the Ukrainian map today, and starting out in the Vovchansk front.
Here we go. All right, so I'm very interested in this because it is a very small bulkhead that the Russians got here around the Belgorod region, but one that they nonetheless did manage to get a small foothold in. So let's take a listen and see what the news is up in Belgorod, or near Belgorod.
as the Ukrainian Air Force dropped a quartet of the US-supplied GBU-39 SDBs at Russian positions. And these GBU-39s, the aviation-launched precision glide drop munitions that have an astounding 110 kilometers range, not to mention a warhead that's close in size to your standard HIMARS rocket, making for a really impressive addition to Ukraine's arsenal. All of which reportedly played a role in this following situation, as Russian soldiers that formerly got themselves surrounded at the aggregate plant at the front were captured, then promoted to POW status most recently, which is a good outcome for them, as they will get food, water, medical care, clean clothes, a warm bed. In fact, everything their command didn't give them, with the exception of military garbs and weapons. But neither side will give them much, if any, army training, a position that both Russia and Ukraine share some common ground on. And so these recent events come as the first shipments of artillery shells under the Czech-led artillery initiative are now starting to arrive in Ukraine and, quote, will continue to do so, as per Czech Foreign Minister Lipavsky. In fact, one such Ukrainian unit said just yesterday that the news on ammunition is getting better and better, stating that not only artillery brigades starting to receive shells, but also conventional mechanized brigades, which not long ago were less well supplied with artillery ammunition, now showing that the overall trend is improving. Furthermore, from the Czech Foreign Minister Lipavsky, he also stated, quote, this year we will be able to procure and continuously deliver quite a lot of Czech-supplied ammunition through different channels, more than 1 million shells to Ukraine. And it is interesting that he said more than 1 million shells, which first of all is impressive, but it's interesting because the Czech Republic, or Czechia, has been working for quite a number of months now on a plan to procure artillery shells from countries outside of Europe, where, at first, they sourced 800,000 shells, followed by another 900,000 shells. So it was 1.7 million shells sourced. However, after further confirmations, it was found that up to 500,000 were not of good quality. But that did still leave a definite potential for about 1.2 million shells available to send to Ukraine. Now, more specifically, these shells are of mixed type, most notably the large caliber 155mm NATO shells and the 152mm Soviet shells, but also an assortment of smaller 122mm shells as well that Ukraine can use on the Vozdika and the D-30 artillery systems that they operate. All of which makes the claims consistent with that of the Ukrainian telegrammer, who mentioned the flow of shells through to the mechanized brigades as well. So it's all very promising news for the AFU, something they've longed for, much beyond the level of basic sustainment activity needs. Then headed down further on the map on.
Big thank you to the Czech Republic for spearheading that initiative, and all others all other nations who have contributed. And to all citizens of those countries, if you are watching this and you did contact your government about supporting that, or protest or support that being given to Ukraine in any way, thank you. All right, I'll let those who are interested watch the rest of the Juzzy's video later on. For now, let's go ahead and jump over to ending analysis, and then we're going to go ahead and finish up the stream.
Opinion out of favor Ukraine. Then to some more news. The first plenary session of Ukraine's peace summit in Switzerland has commenced, marking a historic moment as representatives from over 100 countries, along with various international organizations, that gathered to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. This unprecedented assembly underscores the global effort to address the ongoing conflict and seek a pathway to peace in Europe's east. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Swiss President Viola Amherd inaugurated the summit, emphasizing the importance of collective international effort. Zelensky highlighted the diverse representation at the summit, which includes countries and organizations from every continent and a multitude of political spectrums too. The summit aims to develop a new joint peace plan, building on Zelensky's 10-point peace plan formula. A plan, of course, which includes Russia's full withdrawal from Ukraine and the prosecution of war crimes. The summit is also open to input from participating nations and seeks to inspire a broader process towards peace, acknowledging that Russia's involvement will eventually be necessary for a lasting resolution. Now, of course, Russia wasn't there, not even a foreign minister. But having said that, during World War II, there were significant conferences among the Allied powers that Adolf Hitler never attended either. But it still didn't hinder Allied success. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So a bit strange, but a strange funny. So here we go. As Russian propaganda TV host Sergei Martin claimed, quote, "Russia is a military empire. It always expands and subjugates her neighbors," adding also that China should be subjugated like other neighbors. Although the real kicker here is that he didn't think China was listening. Oh, but they did. Hence all of the Chinese translations on the screen due to it being republished in China for local audience to see what some of those within Russian society think of them. So not a good look for Russia to have one of their only potential economic lifelines be spoken about in such a manner. Now, generally speaking, Putin is pulling the strings in the background, giving talking points to all of the media personalities, but this guy, Sergei, clearly went off script. So that's it for today, guys.
Okay. Wow. Regarding that news, that is hilarious. Which goes to show that Russia doesn't really have any friends. Only quote unquote friends of convenience. And one day, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, whatever it might be, Russia and China will likely come to blows. Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway, let's take a final listen to this closing portion, and please be sure to go support Juzzy and his channel. I'm putting a link to the video itself into the chat now.
But this guy, Sergei, clearly went off script. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment, subscribe if not already. I do appreciate it all, like I always do say there. And yeah, I hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.
All right. So, yeah. Let's see. Let me close out this article. With that, I know that this was not the usual time, but again, we're staying consistent. This stream will occur every week for as long, and likely, and beyond likely, when beyond this this conflict, the war in Ukraine, because there will be a lot to do once the war is over, to rebuild Ukraine and strengthen Ukraine. But yeah, apologies for the timing for this being different than usual, everybody. For everyone who could make it, thank you very much. And please consider supporting the fundraiser for the 110th Mechanized Brigade, because we will continue onward with that and get more FPV drones and delivered to soldiers of Ukraine. Thank you for being here, everybody. And Slava Ukraini. Have a great day or night, wherever you might be in the world. Thank you.